Did you know that over 70% of employers say they value communication skills over technical skills when hiring? I mean, let that sink in for a second. It means this: two candidates could have the same skills, the same experience, the same resume even, but the one who communicates better usually gets the job. Huh. You know, this bow tie is a perfect reminder of that. You can wear a great suit, you can have the right title, and still lose the room if you can't explain who you are and what you bring to the table. Simple as that. Well, maybe it's not so simple, but I'm going to give you a quick tip right now. Something you can use if you try this in an interview today, tomorrow, whatever. I call it the 10-second test. Try to explain what you do in one clear sentence and do it out loud without notes. And if it takes you longer than 10 seconds, or if you feel yourself rambling, then it's not clear enough yet. So tighten it up until someone outside of your industry could understand it. That one sentence often decides whether the interviewer leans in because they're interested or tunes out. All right, because listen, tonight we're not going to talk about memorizing the perfect answers. It's about learning how to communicate clearly and confidently and strategically in job interviews, even if English isn't your first language. So, now that I've finished up this bow tie, looks pretty good, right? Do me a quick favor, tap the like button, hit subscribe, share this with someone preparing for interviews, and drop your questions in the chat. I will try to answer a few at the end of the Mastery Minute or at the end of the show. And by the end of tonight, you will have a simple framework that you can actually use in an interview. Okay? So let's get you interview ready right now. And let me tell you about Daniel. Daniel was very qualified. He had a strong resume, solid technical skills, and he made it to the final round of several interviews again and again. But he kept hearing the same feedback. They said, "You're strong technically, but we went with someone else instead." So we decided we would record one of his mock interviews. And here's what we noticed. His answers, they weren't bad, but they were messy. They took too long, they had no clear point to them, and there was no clear story, so he didn't stand out. So the interviewers were not doubting his technical skills, they were just struggling to follow him. So once we fixed how he structured his answers and how he introduced himself, everything changed. And 2 interviews later, he got a job offer. Whew, good thing too, because it maintained my 100% record of all the people I helped to get to prepare for their interviews. Everybody gets a job. You get a job, and you get a job. So even though there was no difference in Daniel's level of English, the only difference was his ability to communicate. So let me show you the exact skills that made the difference. All right. Now, let me switch my slide here. All right. So, why are interviews about clarity but not perfection? All right. I just want to clear this up because this is where a lot of people get stuck. Interviewers are not grading your grammar. Okay. They're not thinking, "Oh, yes, third conditional, very impressive." Nobody's doing that. They're asking simpler questions. Okay? They want to know, do I understand this person? Can they explain what they do clearly? Can I trust them to communicate with others? That's it. And when someone tells me, "Well, gee, Dennis, my English isn't perfect," well, then I usually smile and say, "Good. It doesn't need to be." It really doesn't. Interviews aren't about sounding smart. They're about sounding clear. Clear beats clever, and clear beats complex, and it beats perfect every time. Okay? If the interviewer understands you and remembers you, then you're already winning. So let's get practical. I want to walk you through a few core interview skills that you can start using right away. Not memorizing, there's no fancy language, just clear tools that work under pressure. Are you ready? I know I am. All right, let's go on to our next section. Skill number 1. Introduce yourself without sounding rehearsed. This is where almost everyone freezes. You know, they hear the question, tell me about yourself. And I see this all the time. People hear that question, because I've interviewed hundreds of people in my previous careers. They hear this question and their brains go blank. Or worse, they go into what I call resume mode. They start listing their job titles and dates and responsibilities, and in about 20 seconds, the interviewer's eyes start to glaze over. And here's the thing that I always tell my clients. This question is not an invitation to read or to recite your resume. Why? Because they've already read it. That's why you got the call for the interview. What they actually want is context. They want to understand why you do what you do. So instead of starting with what, try starting with a little backstory. Okay, not your life story, just the moment that explains how you got into this work, or why this industry interests you, or what pulled you towards this role. Then, and only then, do you anchor it with structure. Okay? Don't just try to tell, oh, your resume. I get this all the time. Oh, it's so hard. All right. So what I like to say is just stick with a simple conversational structure that works. I like to think of it this way. Start with a backstory. Tell one sentence about how or why you ended up here. Then talk about the present, what you do now. And then talk about the direction that or what you're excited about doing next. So for example, you might say something like, well, I actually started in customer support, and that taught me how important clear communication is. I'm currently working on as a project coordinator, focusing on cross-team collaboration. But right now I'm looking for a role where I can work on larger international projects. Doesn't that sound much better? So that opening line, that does a lot of work because it sounds human. You're not reciting your resume. It sounds intentional, and it gives the interviewer a reason to keep listening. Very clear, very calm, very professional. Still no life story, and still no memorization. Now you can write this down and practice it a few times, but that's all you need to do. All right. The second skill, I call this, and this is called the STAR method. The STAR method helps you to stay focused because interviewers love asking you questions like, tell me about a time when, boom, something. Okay, tell me about a time. This is usually where even good candidates start to drift. I see this in practice interviews all the time. Someone starts with a solid answer, and then suddenly they're bouncing between years and projects and teams and side stories, and the listener gets lost. Okay? It's not very good. Here's a quick example. Okay, I once worked with a client who was asked, tell me about a time you dealt with a difficult stakeholder. And he started strong. But 2 minutes later, he was still talking. And the interviewer had stopped taking notes, not because the story was bad, but because it had no shape. So we rebuilt the same answer using STAR. And this is what I always tell people. STAR isn't something that you memorize. It's a railroad track that keeps your answers from going off the rails. That's important. So let me break it down for you. The simple version here. Star, situation. Where were you and what was happening? T is for task. What was your responsibility? Action is A, what you actually did. And finally, the result. What changed because of what you did? Okay, so now listen to the difference. Before, it was, well, we had this client and there were a lot of emails and different teams were involved and it was kind of stressful and eventually we figured it out. Well, that's not very helpful, is it? It's rambling. After Star, however, it became much more clear. The situation was a delayed project with an unhappy client. My task was to manage communication and reset expectations. I scheduled weekly update calls, clarified priorities, and documented next steps. As a result, there's that R, the client stayed on board and the project was delivered a week early. You see there? It's the same experience, but has a very different impact. You don't need a long story. You just need a clear path, that railroad. Interviewers don't remember every sentence, but they do remember the outcomes. And trust me, stories sell. They sell much better than facts. So Star will get you there calmly and clearly. Number 3, handle difficult questions without panicking. This is the moment that makes a lot of people sweat. You're cruising along, and then the interviewer drops that one question, the one you didn't prepare for, the one where your brain goes, oh no! You know, I remember working with a client who said, Dennis, this is where everything falls apart for me. In his interview, he was asked, what's one weakness you're currently working on? And the moment he heard it, he panicked. He started talking fast, he panicked, he filled every second with noise, and halfway through his answer, he didn't even know where he was going. I told him, here's what I told him, and what I want you to hear. Interviewers expect you to pause. Okay? A pause doesn't mean that you're weak. It doesn't mean that your English is bad. It just means that you're thinking. And thinking looks professional. So instead of rushing, give yourself a second. Use it. So here's some simple phrases to help you buy that time. Here are some of my favorites. Well, that's a great question. Let me think for a moment. Or let me clarify the situation before I answer. Or that's something I've been actively working on. Let me explain. Something like that. That one sentence, it does 3 things. 3, not 2. It slows you down, it shows control, and it gives your brain time to organize. So that's the funny part. Here's the funny part about that story. When we practiced this, my client thought that the pause would feel awkward, but in the real interview, the interviewer just nodded, leaned back, and listened. Silence used on purpose sounds confident. Rushing sounds nervous, so always choose the pause. And let's wrap things up with number 4. Skill number 4 is to ask smart questions at the end. All right, this is one of the most underrated moments in the entire interview. The interviewer looks at you and asks, do you have any questions for us? And I can't tell you how many times I have heard someone say, no, I think that's all. Okay, let me be blunt for a second. That answer doesn't sound confident. It sounds finished. So I once worked with a candidate who did everything right. He, came in, gave a strong intro, had clean star answers, calm delivery. Then came the final question. And he smiled and said, nope, you covered everything. And the interviewer smiled back and mentally closed the notebook. So now compare that with another client. Same stage of the interview, same question. Do you have anything for us? Any questions for us? She paused for a second and said yes. What does success look like for someone in this role after 6 months? The interviewer leaned forward, started explaining, pulled in examples, and that changed the whole energy of the room. So here's the difference. The good answer, or the bad answer, ends the interview, and the good answer turns it into a conversation. Simple as that. So here's some questions that actually work. So you don't need to be clever. You don't need to ask too much about the company, but you do need curious questions. So try things like, what does success look like in the first 6 months? What challenges are the team facing right now? Or how do strong performers typically grow in this role? So these do 3 important things for you. 1, they show that you're thinking ahead. 2, they show that you care about impact, not just the job offer. And 3, they leave the interviewer with a strong final impression. And they think, oh, this person's going to blend in and already looking to improve. You're no longer just answering questions. You're actually stepping into the role before you even have it. Pretty good, right? So let me tell you right now, if interviews make you nervous, that's normal, okay? You don't become confident from having perfect English. You become confident by being prepared and having some structure, all right? And finally, you don't need to sound native. You just need to sound clear. That's it. So don't worry about your English. So we're going a little over time, so let me just say, here's your challenge. Before your next interview, number 1, write your introduction. Backstory, present, and direction. Number 2, choose a couple of star stories. Finally, number 3, prepare 3 smart questions that alone right there will put you ahead of most candidates. So if you need more, if you want to learn more, you can read the full blog and grab some extra listening ideas at the link in the description or in the comments. And if you want a complete system to help you improve your English in just 10 minutes a day, check out Mastering English for Busy Professionals. There's no boring textbooks, no drills, just habits that actually work. So remember to like, subscribe, hit the share button and share this with someone who is preparing for interviews. Why? Oh yeah, don't forget to drop your questions in the chat, because now it's time for the Mastery Minute. Yeah, that's right. The Mastery Minute. Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. So let me ask you something. Have you ever walked out of an interview and thought, I answered everything, but I don't think they'll remember me? Well, that's where today's phrase comes in. Stand out. Now, most people think that standing out means being louder or more impressive or trying to say something clever. But that's not what this phrase originally meant. The expression stand out comes from old military formations. Soldiers would line up, shoulder to shoulder, same uniform, same position. When one soldier literally stepped forward, they stood out. They weren't better, they weren't louder, they were simply easier to see, and that's the real meaning. In interviews, standing out isn't about flashy English. It's about being easy to follow. And here's what that sounds like in real life. So you might say, instead of, I worked on a lot of different projects with multiple teams and handled various responsibilities. Snore. Be more specific. I led communication between 2 teams, solved a delivery delay, and helped the project finish early. So you could be the same experience that you're talking about, but one of these paints a clearer picture. It's much easier to remember. Therefore, it stands out. So if you want to stand out in English interviews, don't try to impress. Try to be understood. That's how you stand out. All right? That's it. And speaking of that's it, that is a wrap for Episode 105. Tonight we covered the English skills that actually win interviews, not textbook answers, but real communication tools. And as we wrap up the year, I just want to let you know I'm going to be taking a little time off from the live 15-minute mastery show to explore some new content ideas and possible things like that. I will still be posting. I'm just not going to be doing the live shows for now. And I want to wish you and your families a happy new year. And I genuinely would love to hear from you. What kind of content would you like to see more of next year? Interviews, short tips, listening practice, maybe some real world stories? Drop your ideas in the comments. I will be reading them. I always read them. And until then, just remember, keep your bow tie straight, keep your English practical, and stay curious. As always, I'm Dennis Wilborn. This has been 15-Minute Mastery. All right, maybe more like 20-Minute Mastery. Thanks for your time, and Happy New Year.